What's up, everybody? It's Cassandra Lopez, and welcome to the Living in Bremerton podcast. So this is the first ever episode of the Living in Bremerton podcast, which you will find on my website, livinginbremerton.com. I will also have a playlist on my YouTube channel, Living in Bremerton, Washington, that will have all of my podcasts moving forward. So thanks for being here. Basically, this podcast is going to be all about living in Bremerton, just like the moniker would suggest. And I hope you find a lot of value. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your suggestions, how we can make it better, topics you would like to hear, all that stuff. I eventually plan on having some guests on the show, so that'll be a lot of fun. But for now, it's just going to be a solo podcast. And the first episode, we're going to talk about 5 reasons why I moved to Bremerton, why I stayed in Bremerton, and why I think it's kind of one of the best places on earth. So a little bit about me. I am a U.S. Navy veteran, and that's actually how I came to live here. I was stationed here. I was active duty from 1998 to 2004. So I didn't really have like a choice. You know how like you get to pick your top 3 location, which is adorable, but it may or may not, come to fruition. So I got to pick my top 3. Bremerton was my first choice, so I just kind of lucked out there. Maybe it's because there were so many open billets, because everyone wanted to go to like the warmer places like Hawaii or San Diego or Norfolk, which can be warm in some parts of the year, but gets feet of snow in other parts of the year. So all that to say, I moved here because I was stationed here. Okay, so in 2004 is when my contract is up. I got out. I started my family. I have 3 kiddos. And so I just decided this was a fantastic place to stay and live, raise my kids, and just kind of work and play, because it has so much to offer and so many cool things going on locally that, why would I leave? All right, so we're just going to jump right into it. And I would love to hear if you are currently living in Bremerton, if you were born and raised here, if you moved here because of a job or family, if you moved here just because. I've had clients who moved here literally just because they came from across the country. They were allowed to work from home remotely. Their home base is still in their previous state where they came from, but they can work remotely from anywhere. So they decided to come here, and here they are. So I would love to hear why you're here, why you stayed here, and what you love about Bremerton. So one of the first reasons I stayed here was just the lush, the greenery, the very life feeling. I don't know how else to describe it. There's just an abundance of life because everything's green and there's so much nature to be observed and to be experienced. For God's sakes, I was driving down the road the other day and there was on the freeway and everyone almost came to like a standstill because a bald eagle decided it was going to go hunting for lunch in the middle of the day right over the freeway, and it's like swooped down, and it was very majestic, and the traffic was well warranted. But where else can you go to see that stuff? Other places where they have bald eagles, of course, but I was actually listening to something the other day, and they found the largest bald eagle nest on record is 8 feet in diameter, and it was 20 feet in diameter and 8 feet deep. That's huge, you guys. That's bigger than some people's bedrooms. And it was 30 years old, because eagles will have partners for life and they just reuse the nest over and over until they can't anymore, and then the next generations take over. But can you imagine? I know around here there's specific legislation in place that protects areas and trees with bald eagle nests in it. So if you have a property with a bald eagle nest on it, you're actually not allowed to develop within a certain radius of that nest. It's all protected species in a protected habitat, which I think is really cool, which, allows us to experience things like driving down the freeway and having an eagle go hunting for lunch. The outdoorsy stuff, anywhere you live in Bremerton or Kitsap County in general, you're 10 minutes from a trailhead, you're 10 minutes from a bike path. We have lots of street lanes. I actually did a video on this on my YouTube channel about biking around Bremerton, and this was actually before they put in all of these bike lanes, because I remember commenting on how for outdoorsy there weren't a lot of options for bicycle commuters, like if you took your bike to and from work and you rode on the street versus, mountain biking just for recreation. And then they put in all of these bike lanes. So if you're like in downtown Bremerton or West Bremerton or Minette, you're going to see all of these bright green painted bike lanes, which is super duper handy because, we're starting to, we should be well in the throes of this already, to be honest, having more options that are non-car commuting options. So like carpooling, bicycles, scooters. We're seeing a lot of scooters lately. It's kind of funny to see a grown man in a suit and tie rolling down the street on a scooter with his helmet. I applaud you, by the way. I'm not making fun. I totally applaud you. So anyway, outdoorsy stuff. If you're into swimming or boating or skiing, water skiing or snow skiing, horseback riding, dog trails, off-roading, like ATVs or off-road vehicles, hiking, camping, snow camping, all this stuff. Like literally not a shortage of anything. I think the one thing that we would be missing would be like a river, like a raging river, One of my favorite places to vacation is Bend, Oregon. They have the most beautiful architecture there, and also they have the Deschutes River, which runs right through the town, or I should probably say the town was built on the river, right? But the Deschutes during the summertime, I mean, there's people that tie like 30 inner tubes together, and they're just this massive people like cruising down the river. It's a lot of fun. There's a little spot right by the Old Mill District where you can actually take your surfboard. There's like a little mini current where you can actually ride your surfboard, but it's like stationary, like just the way the current is on the rocks. You actually don't move, but you can like wake like you're surfing, so it's kind of cool. Anyway, so here we don't have like a raging river in Kitsap County. The only actual river is the Union River. Everything else is a stream or a creek. Through Kitsap County, Silverdale specifically, Clear Creek is probably the biggest one. There's also Barker Creek, and there's also Gold Creek, which is kind of down by Belfair. But they're everywhere. I mean, a lot of people have creeks on their property. A lot of them are seasonal, with the wintertime and the wet weather and everything like that. But anyway, there's no shortage of outdoor stuff to do if you love that and you want to put that on your agenda. Another reason why I stayed here was the location and proximity to kind of everywhere. Like we're in this little peninsula. So if you look on a map of Seattle and you look 12 miles due west right across the Puget Sound, you'll see Bremerton, which is kind of geographically right in the center of Kitsap County. It is coastal in the regard that it's a peninsula on a larger peninsula. So the Kitsap Peninsula is on the Olympic Peninsula. So just water on a million sides. We're not an island at all, but we have tons of little nooks and crannies and all kinds of inlets and bays and things. So it creates for a lot of waterfront mileage. So pretty much anywhere you go, whether you're on the east side or the west side of the county, you're going to have amazing sunsets or sunrises, mountain views in all kinds of directions. There's the Olympics to the west, and there's the Cascades to the east. So you'll see Mount Rainier, which is to the southeast. A lot of people who have like satellites for their TV or their internet, they'll say, point your satellite towards Mount Rainier. Point the dish towards Mount Rainier, because that's where the satellite is. Anyway, so the proximity to the larger places like Seattle, like Tacoma, like we can take a day trip over to Seattle, which I did recently for a couple of different regards. I took my kids over to the Pacific Science Center during President's Day weekend. It was a 3-day weekend. So took them over there, took them up to the Space Needle, took them all around all of the museums and the exhibits and everything. And it is just a super fun place to spend a day. I recommended buying your tickets in advance because they're a little bit more affordable than buying them at the window. But there's a lot to do there. There's a couple of IMAX theaters. There's a butterfly house where they, grow and have all these lovely butterfly species that actually aren't native to the area. So, they maintain the climate inside the butterfly house like a tropical climate. So it also has a lot of tropical plants. That's really cool. There's a dinosaur exhibit. There's all kinds of cool stuff over there. So I took my kids over there for a day trip, and then we just take the ferry to and from. And so it's super easy to get there. There's also Pike's Place Market, which is super famous. They have the fish throwing market there. So they only throw the fish if somebody buys one. So if you're standing around waiting for them to throw a fish, you should probably buy one. And they ship them worldwide, so you can buy fish and they ship it to wherever. It's really cool, and Pike's Market's open year round, so you can get, seasonal produce and fresh flowers and all kinds of cool stuff like that year round. They also have a bunch of little eclectic restaurants kind of like tucked into the market, like the downstairs and stuff that you may not know it's there. So that's pretty cool joint. And then, last Friday I was out there with clients showing condos. And so we just carpooled over there, went and showed around to condos, had lunch, and then took the ferry back. So it was great. You can go over there, experience the city life if you want to catch a sports game or something. The Climate Pledge Arena, which is where the new hockey team, the Kraken, plays. It's about a 10 or 15 minute drive from the ferry dock. There's also T-Mobile Park and Lumen Field. So that's where the Mariners and the Seahawks and the Sounders play. So if you're into soccer, football, baseball, that's where you would see it. And that's about a 10-minute walk from the ferry. So a lot of times people will, take the ferry over, walk to the game, take the ferry back after you're done. It's pretty great because parking is just astronomically expensive. It's stupid expensive if you drive over there. But all that to say, you can spend a day in Seattle and do your thing, go see a show or whatever, and then just take the ferry back and you're done. And you can come back to Bremerton or Silverdale or Port Orchard or Poulsbo, or wherever you're living, and call it a day. We're also relatively close to Tacoma. Tacoma is about 35-40 miles southeast-ish. So towards Mount Rainier. And Tacoma is actually not considered a big city per population. It's less than 250,000 people. I think it's right around that mark anyway. But Tacoma has a lot going for it. It's got Point Defiance Zoo, Point Ruston, which is kind of this new development they're doing in North Tacoma. The Stadium District has Stadium High School, which has actually been featured in a bunch of movies. And then they have the Tacoma Mall, and they have like a car museum and just some cool stuff down there. So if you wanted to go down there for like some shopping or whatever, and then just come back for the day, I know that Tacoma Mall is pretty superior to our mall here at Kitsap. Kitsap Mall is in Silverdale, and it's just, I don't know. I think especially since the pandemic, a lot of places have closed their brick and mortars, and, online shopping only kind of gigs. So it's maybe lacking in a couple of regards. There's some cool anchor stores. I mean, there's like, Barnes and Noble, and there's Cost Plus World Market, all the typical anchor stores, and a couple of cool local eclectic places inside. But for the most part, I think if you're looking for a really large variety with a couple of really cool stores, Tacoma Mall might be superior. There's also like Westfield and Seattle and stuff. But anyway, all that to say, shopping is probably secondary because, like I said, you can get everything online. But if you wanted to take a trip to Seattle, to Tacoma, you could also go over west over the Hood Canal Bridge, which takes you over to Jefferson County and on to Clallam County, which is Olympic Mountain. So if you wanted to go camping out there, you're within a couple of hours drive of the Pacific Ocean. We are 3 hours north of Portland. If you like your snow skiing, you would be going to Snoqualmie Pass, which I'm not a snow skier, but this is what I hear. Snoqualmie Pass is good for beginners. There's also Mount Baker and Mount Hood down in Oregon if you wanted to drive a ways, but I hear they have really good skiing. Mount Bachelor's even farther, that's Bend. Anyway, there's skiing everywhere. We have a lot of mountains and a few of them active volcanoes like Mount Rainier. So we're kind of really centrally located, and then within a 30 to a 3 hour drive, you pretty much have every amenity and everything you would want to visit or do. It's pretty darn awesome. So another reason why I stayed here, and this is debatable, but this is just my perspective because I grew up in California where it's crazy expensive, but is the cost of living. So right now, obviously, all the talk in the town is the cost of housing and the rise of interest rates and how expensive it is to live. And believe me, you guys, I get it, because I have an 18-year-old who's getting ready to move out, and it's like, I don't even know how she's going to afford it. So, we're coming up with a plan, if you will, but I get it. I mean, we were all there. I had a kind of a different plan when I graduated high school. I went to college for a couple of years, and then I joined the military. So I just kind of took off, I got paid to travel. I got paid for housing, so I had a different experience. Overall, the cost of living here is relatively affordable. Housing wise, it's about half of what you'd pay in Seattle. So, my house right now is worth, I don't know, $500,000. It'd be 8, 9, maybe $1 million, depending on if it's on an island or if it has a view or waterfront or whatever. Over in King County in Issaquah, Snohomish County, it's crazy expensive over there, and over here, it just seems to be a little bit milder, a little bit mellower. A lot of that big city vibe also comes at a cost. So over here, tucked away on the nice quiet peninsula, we tend to have a more affordable cost of living. So we're talking like across the board, like groceries, gas, entertainment, all that stuff. Obviously, because housing is such a big percentage of our monthly cost of living, it's going to be the one that is going to weigh the heaviest. So all that to say, we do have a lot of areas that are 7-figure properties because they are western facing, or because they are waterfront, or because they are 20 acres, or whatever. So depending on what you're looking for and what your needs are, you should be able to find something that's in your price range that at least checks most of your boxes, but that's a conversation for a different time. It's not a secret that I'm a real estate agent. That's how I make my living. That's what I do is I help people buy and sell homes. So that's not really what this podcast is going to be about, though. If you have any questions specifically about that stuff, feel free to contact me offline and we can totally have a conversation. But, I just want this to be more informational for you guys. Another thing that I really love about Bremerton and this area in general is the history behind it. And, I think a lot of that has to do with my perspective of being active duty and being really proud of my service and being really proud to live in an area that is really got a lot of military influence. So Naval Base Kitsap is 3 bases. It's Bremerton, Bangor, and Keyport. Bremerton's a surface ships, Bangor's the subs, and Keyport is more of like a support auxiliary base. But they have done a really good job of preserving a lot of the military heritage and the Navy history that we have here. It's really cool to walk through some of the older neighborhoods that are like directly around Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, because when it was being built out in the late 1800s, of course, they had to build all of this housing to support the workers and their families. And so a lot of these older homes, we're talking 110 years old at this point, the way that they were designed to accommodate, say 4 bachelors, and there was, every room has a deadbolt on it, and there's a common kitchen area and a common bath area, almost set up like a dormitory. So it's kind of interesting to see that was the lifestyle back then, and then how families over the years have bought and sold these properties and renovated them and back into single family homes. So it's kind of neat to see that kind of architecture and style of house. It's also really cool to like the influence that the shipyard has on the local economy. If the powers that be ever closed our shipyard, like our area and our town would be in a world of hurt. We rely so heavily on the shipyard for employment, and the people who work there also live here. So, they spend their money out in town. So it's really, really good for our economy here. If they ever took that away, boy, I don't know if I'd stay here. One of the reasons is because of that, our economy is very robust, and it's kind of cushioned from a lot of the market fluctuations, if you will, just because of that, because we have so much, so many people coming and going all the time, military and civil service support staff. It keeps our housing market really afloat. So if that were ever to go away, boy, I'm gonna have to rethink. But anyway, I digress. There's a ton of museums everywhere. So right next to the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard is the Naval History Museum. There's also the Turner Joy, which is a Vietnam era ship destroyer that was preserved to reflect its, service era state, so you can walk around below decks and everything, and it's preserved exactly how it was when it was in service. That's if you haven't done that, and if you've never experienced being on a naval vessel, that's a cool way to do it. There's also the Undersea Museum up at Keyport, so that's open to the public. You don't need to go on base to attend that. The Naval History Museum and the Undersea Museum at Keyport both have events during the summertime for kids. So like weekly, there'll be like classes or STEM activities or whatever. I know my kids really enjoy going there. You can go and make like pneumatic rockets, and you can go build bridges out of popsicle sticks, and like just do all these really cool things for a couple of hours. In the summertime, kids don't have anything going on. So it's a good way to keep their brains active. I know my kids love it. There's also all, like other kinds of historical things like the Admiral Theater and the Roxy. So those are about a block apart from each other in downtown Bremerton. Both built in the 40s. Both have been renovated since then. But basically, they had those there for live shows, while this area was still very up and coming. And so it was a great way to provide entertainment to all of the military and the shipyard employees who were living and working here. A couple of other things I'll touch on which aren't really things why I stayed here or anything, but it's kind of a cool thing. So the weather, everybody talks about how it rains all the time in Washington. It does not rain all the time here. In fact, if you look at like Seattle, if you Google, top inches of rainfall per year, Seattle isn't even in the top 10, which may surprise you. Other places like Houston or Atlanta get more rain than we do. So I think we have that reputation because the rainfall that we get is not necessarily hard and fast. It's more of like a consistent light rain. And so because of that, it just feels like it's a lot of rain, because maybe we'll have 4 or 5 days in a row of consistent light rain, but it won't be like a torrential downpour, so we don't get the volume of rain that these other places get, right? But because it's so frequent, it feels like it's more consistent, but that's also why it's so green. We do have like 150 solid days of sunshine a year. Today, it's a gorgeous sunny day. Yesterday was pretty rainy, so it's a really nice reprieve from yesterday. It's a gorgeous sunny day today. It's supposed to be like this for the next several days, I think all week, maybe some on and off showers here and there, at the risk of sounding like a weather person. But I mean, we don't get the amount of rain that our reputation would precede. So that's pretty nice because, living here, you just have to kind of get used to being outdoors in all kinds of weather. So the fact that it doesn't rain a huge volume is kind of nice because, you always should take a rain jacket wherever you go, even if it's a sunny day. Like I have a coat in my car right now because you just never know. But, you may not need it. Another thing is, just to touch on the traffic. So we don't have a whole lot of traffic here like you would think. I-5, which goes from Canada down to Mexico, all the way up, the Seattle side on the east side and everything. Just gridlock, predictable gridlock. And around Tacoma, like around the Tacoma Dome and down through like JBLM, right? Joey Base Lewis McCord. They've been doing road construction on that stretch of I-5 for probably 21-ish years. That's not an exaggeration. It's just like project after project after project. So it doesn't matter what time of day. Could be rush hour, could be noon, could be 2 a.m. You're going to hit some sort of slowdown. We don't have that over here to that degree. There is one section of freeway that gets predictable traffic every day, and that's Highway 3 South, where Highway 3 and Charleston Boulevard merge right at the shipyard, and down through Gorst, and that's daily between like 3 and 6. And we call it shipyard traffic because it's all of the shipyard employees and all of the Bangor employees coming from up north heading home if they live in South Kitsap or Belfair. And it just bottlenecks. It goes from 4 lanes to 1 lane for about 50 yards and then back into 2 lanes. It's just a nightmare. It's just a total nightmare. There was no forethought in the infrastructure. There was no like, oh, maybe our population is going to grow and we might need to think about this. Like, no, there's none of that. It's right on the water. So like on one side is the water, which is Sinclair Inlet, and the other side is like Sherman Heights, like Sherman Hill, I think is what it's called. It's a giant granite hill. It's like enormous. And so you're not going to cut into the granite to widen the freeway because it's already a fall risk. They already have like the rock nets and stuff on there, and you're not going to be able to expand out into the water. Plus there's like train tracks right there along the water between the freeway and the water that is a supply train that goes right into the shipyard. I don't think those tracks are active anymore, but you can't like it's not going to be strong enough to build, expand the freeway over. So anyway, all that to say, who knows if they're ever going to do anything about it. The point is there's a ton of traffic right there, Monday through Friday, between like 3 and 6. Just deal with it, right? So if I'm showing houses in Port Orchard or out in Belfair, I will plan my trips so that I'm out there first and I work my way back to avoid all that traffic because I just don't want to get stuck in it. It's a nightmare. And I know for some families it's going to be unavoidable. If you work in Bremerton or Bangor, Poulsbo, anywhere in North Kitsap or Central Kitsap, and live in Port Orchard, live in South Kitsap, it's just going to be unavoidable. You would think with, the prevalence of people working from home more often or, that kind of thing, that it would subside a little bit. It hasn't. It's still a mess. And if it's a holiday weekend, it starts at like 2, maybe even noon. People are getting off work early and every other truck is pulling a trailer and they're all heading out for the weekend to go camping. So good for them. It just gets worse. So anyway, that is pretty much the only bad traffic. other than that, if there's a slowdown, there's a reason. It's either road construction or an accident. Pretty spoiled in that regard. We don't have a whole lot of traffic. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I just want to close by saying, I drive around Bremerton and I hear a lot of the negative, and I hear a lot of people comment on my YouTube channel actually that, Bremerton's a shithole and don't move here, and all it is drugs and your car getting broken into and all this stuff. Okay, so here's the deal, people. I don't know where you would live on this planet where there isn't an area of town that would be, across the tracks, if you will. I have to be really careful about how I word this, by the way, because in my industry, in real estate, I could get fined for violating the Fair Housing Act just by telling you guys where the crime neighborhoods are. I'm actually not allowed to tell you, which is ridiculous, because when you're buying a house, the location's the number one thing that you can't change. It actually can factor into 50 to 60% of a home's value, good or bad. And wouldn't you want to know, when you're purchasing the largest investment in your lifetime, likely, that it's going to be in a location that is good, that works for your lifestyle and is good for you and your family? Wouldn't you want to know that? I can't tell you that. The only thing I can tell you is, hey, here's some public data sites that you can go and research yourself. Hey, here is the phone number for the Bremerton Police Department and the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office. You can call them and ask them yourself. I think it's just super ridiculous that. So anyway, what I was saying was, sure, we have those areas. Everywhere does. Tacoma has got one of the largest per capita crime rates in the country. I mean, we're not Tacoma. Seattle defunded their police, and now they've got all kinds of issues over there. The governor decided to instigate the non-pursuit law, so police officers can't pursue car chases, right? So there's all these things going on that would lend themselves to, crime and all that stuff. But Bremerton is not just, it's not. There are so many fabulous areas. And it's really unfortunate that one little pocket of society is going to ruin it for everybody. It's not, you guys. I would not have stayed here. I would not have raised my kids here if it was that bad. It's just not that bad. And I'm here to totally squash that rumor. And I defy you to challenge me. You can send me a picture of your car that got broken into, and I'll be like, yep, it happens. But that is the exception, not the norm. And I'm really sorry if that happened to you. Of course, I'm not promoting the crime. I wouldn't want to be a victim of that either. I think it's deplorable. I think people need to be held accountable. But it happens, you guys. It's happened since the beginning of time. And Bremerton's not going to be any different in that regard. So I don't want you to think that Bremerton is just, it's not. So when you're researching this place, or surrounding areas like Port Orchard, Silverdale, Polsbo, Seabeck, Kingston, Hansville, all these towns, they all have information on the public data site. So, I encourage you to kind of check those out and see where there is to see. If you have any questions about any specific neighborhoods, let me know. I will do my best to give you objective information without steering, because that's what we call the S word in real estate. We cannot steer people to or from neighborhoods based on any kind of metrics or demographics, which I would not, but it could be seen as that, if you will, if that makes sense. So anyway, put your comments below. I want to hear your comments. I will read them all. I will reply to them all. I'm looking forward to hosting this podcast in future episodes and having all kinds of cool topics and eventually guests on. I'm really, really excited. It's taken me a while to kind of get this off the ground and get this going, so I'm really happy you're here. Thank you for listening. Have a good one. See you on the next episode.